Hi everyone, welcome back to His and Her Life Hacks. My name's Dawn.
And I'm Larry.
And in today's episode, episode number 3, we are talking about something that we mentioned in episode 1, which was we've each gone through different tragedies. And so today we're going to focus on Larry's tragedy and his story. Kind of doing it a little like an interview style just because it feels like it flows better that way. So Larry, why don't you take us to the beginning and start there?
All right, thank you, Dawn. Yeah. So I'll take you back to August 3rd, 1991 in Sea City, New Jersey, and I met who would become my future wife, Chris Federico, in a bar, and we hit it off fantastically that night. And, within 2 years, we were married, right? So one of the things that I had loved about meeting her and resonated with me was her faith. It was an extremely strong faith, and I felt I had a strong faith, and the connection was great that way, and it just became the kind of foundation for our relationship. And so, as we started our marriage and the kids started to come along, we basically divided up our duties, and we said, Chris is going to be the one staying at home, raise the kids, kind of be the anchor, and I'll be the one out providing. I worked for GE at the time, and it was a really good job. And I got to travel the world, but also be home when I needed to be home to help raise the kids. And that was our thing, and it worked great together. And the kids started coming along. We had Larry, and then Jordan, Zach, Celeste, Simon, Faith, Carmel, and down to Solomon.
And Solomon was a baby, so he had just been born. 2 months before the tragedy. So why don't you take us to May 12th, 2011?
Yeah, so we were living the dream, right? We were living our dream life, and it was, like you said, 2 months after Solomon was born. I had started to travel again because I hadn't been for those previous 2 months, and I was called down literally the night before a meeting that was going to be taking place on May 12th. It was going to be in Charlottesville, Virginia, which was the headquarters of the division of GE that I worked for. So I got up that morning, kissed Chris goodbye, and drove down with every intention of handling the meeting and then coming back and being home that night because I had to bring Jordan, I think, to a practice or a game. So that was kind of the background. And during the meeting, I got the first call, the first of 2 calls that both you would never want to receive in your life, and it was from the Thorndale Police Department, and they said, is this Larry Ambrose? We're in your house. We're working on your wife. And, I was stunned saying, what do you mean working on my wife?
Right.
Because, she was completely healthy. And then, so that led to, getting the decision to leave, obviously, immediately. 2 colleagues, Sheila Kester and Jim Walsh, drove me up. We were heading up to home. And, and everything's kind of crazy going through my mind, like what could be happening. And I'm trying to connect with my sister-in-laws and other people to figure out to piece us all together. And then I got the second call that you absolutely never want to receive, which was from my brother-in-law, Craig. He had entered into the hospital in the emergency room and was there when they were working on her. And he came back out to call me and let me know that she had passed away. And, as you could imagine, just utter devastation, right? And fortunately, I had Jim and Sheila there to help me just maintain any composure and just try to think through, because we had to then figure out some obvious next steps. So we went right to the hospital. I had maybe 10 minutes with her in the hospital, and, I just asked her, give me the strength, give me the words to tell the kids what just happened. And so then we made our way, my brother-in-laws took me back home, and my kids, had gotten off the bus, and the younger ones had gathered back at the house. And I gathered them into the family room, and I said, kids, because they're wondering, like, where's Mom? Why are you here? Why are Uncle Pete and Uncle Al here? And I said, who does your mom loved the most in the world? And my oldest at the time, because Larry was still on the high school bus, Jordan said, Jesus, which tells you everything you need to know about Chris and her faith. And I said, yes. And today Jesus took Chris home. And slowly the realization came across from youngest down, or oldest down to youngest, and obviously you can imagine what that impact was and so forth. And then Larry came home, and I had to tell him, as he got off the bus as well. And, just the whole world completely flipped upside down in an instant. And literally it was an instant, because she was healthy, but she had a cardiac arrhithmia, and she just dropped. And she had actually been talking to her sister-in-law, Peg, on the phone.
Her sister, right?
Her sister, I'm sorry, her sister Peg. And Peg was the one who had called 911 when Chris was no longer responding. So, yeah, so that was...
It's horrible. It's so sad. I can't even imagine, just like you said, how life can change in an instant. And you think somebody's fine, you leave for the day or whatever, and then hours later. So I can't even imagine. I was going to ask, how did you manage? What kind of support? I know you had support from the community, from the church, from your family, but what did that look like? Because as a man, right, number one, men are programmed, just do it all yourself. You can do everything, and so receiving help might have felt a little...
It did, and because you're right. You think, all right, we can get this, we can get through this, we'll be able to figure this out. But it didn't take very long to realize, I was going to need a massive amount of help. And fortunately, I had people around me who were thinking much more clearly about what we were going to need, and they were able to organize, and it didn't take me to be convinced that I needed it. And, pretty soon they had just organized an army of a support system. And, we as a family, meals were delivered to us for a year until we decided we needed to take that over. We had our laundry done, put your laundry out every night, and our laundry was done for 2 years. Rides, they organized, benefits to raise money for my kids' education fund. Just anything you could think of, the family, the community jumped in, the family jumped in to help. And, one of the things I learned is that there is grace in receiving that help, and there's obviously grace in giving that help, because people would tell me, while I'm helping you, I'm praying for my family, I'm praying for your family, I'm praying for the community at large. And so you realize that, in this tragedy, out of this tragedy comes, God's grace that is handed down to everybody involved. And in the end, it was a beautiful thing. We desperately needed it. And to this day, we are forever indebted to all those people who helped us.
Yeah, and I would imagine that all the help that you received from the community and the church and your neighbors and family allowed you to really focus on your new role, the role that you didn't know much about. You were the father, the breadwinner. That was just the way it was.
Yeah.
Chris was great at being a mom and loving and nurturing and being home, and you were now forced into this role to be mom and dad and also do what she did, which nobody can be somebody else.
Right.
You can try, but so how was that? How did that feel? And
yeah, it was difficult, right? Because I had taken time off right after she had passed away to kind of reestablish my relationship with the kids, because you're right, I was traveling a lot, and now I had to be dad, but I also had to fulfill the mom role. And now, fortunately, we had nannies who had come on, and they were in our house 12, 13 hours a day helping me, which I absolutely needed. But, the kids still needed a mom, a mom in their life. And I was trying to fill that role in. It just kind of became the new normal, and we just figured it out one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, sometimes 10 minutes at a time, because that's as far out as we could look. But it worked, it was not ideal, but we were able to come together with the support, and, now tackle this into kind of new normal each day. And we were given signs of hope. There was a number of them, but a story I'd love to tell was, it was literally the 1 year anniversary of her passing. And as a family, we had decided, we're not going to hide from this day. We're going to embrace it. We're going to go celebrate her life. We're going to do all the things that she loved to do. So that's what we did. We got up in the morning, we went to church together, then we went to a local restaurant, which was one of our favorite restaurants to go to. We just had lunch. We drove down to the beach, 2 hours to Seattle, and one of our favorite things to do was run on the beach. So my kids had a ceremonial run on the beach, and then we took the short trip over to Ocean City, New Jersey, went on the boardwalk, which we would often do. We rode the rides because it was a Saturday, had ice cream, and it was, given the circumstances, it turned out to be a beautiful day.
Yeah.
And then we come home, it's Sunday, and now Sunday turns into Monday, and I'm downstairs, early in the morning, putting a load of laundry in. The kids are getting ready to school, and I look out the window. We had a walkout basement, and there's a peacock staring right at me, like right into my eyes. And I'm like, I've never seen a peacock outside of a zoo. Yeah. And I was like stunned. So I called the kids down, and they're crazy, like running around all excited to see this peacock. And as the day went on, they're in school, I'm in the house, and I look out and I see the peacock up on our swing set. And so I grab my camera and I'm walking out and I'm walking up to him. And as I do it, he just majestically, raises his arm. So I got pictures of it. And I had been calling my sister-in-laws and they're like Googling what's the meaning of the peacock. And, the symbology in Christianity is that they guard the gates of heaven. So here we are a year after she passed away. And we're getting reassurance from God, I think from Chris, that, they're with us on this journey. And, we just need to keep marching forward, right? And as hard as it was, we were getting that encouragement. And it was, it provided wind in our sails that we desperately needed.
And it sounds like Chris made herself known coming in hot, right?
Yeah, right.
Like she couldn't just show up as a red robin, she had to come in as a peacock, something that was unique and
exactly.
and something to make you go, what is that?
Right.
So it sounds like this was your new life and everything. So how was that affecting you? Like, it sounds like you were starting to get into a rhythm and the kids and routine and all of that, but how was it, if you had to take a step back, how was it affecting your health and your mindset and your everyday living in that day, in that moment?
I would say for the first 3 or 4 years, it was doable, right? I worked for GE. They were unbelievably supportive. They gave me a role that I could do from home. I wasn't traveling nearly as much. I was able to be home more. And so I think I had, for the most part, had things as best you can under control. But then, as we got into 2015, 16, 17, things changed, right? So first of all, the kids are getting older, right? And so the decisions you need to make around what's important to them are now college, right? Where am I going to go to college? What am I going to major in? Driving. I have more drivers now in the house and teaching them how to do it. So the stakes in the decision with the kids were increasing. The younger ones were now becoming very active. So the magnitude of the effort was expanding. And then at the same time, GE was investing in building a software business, and I was a part of that. And instead of now going to Charlottesville, Virginia, I was now flying to California because that was the headquarters. And so the travel ramped up. And what I found over time is that I started to lose control, and to the point where I kind of term it, the losses started to pile up. I started to lose connection to my kids because I may have physically been there, but mentally I was checked out. Travel all week, get home on a Friday night, and have to get ready to travel again Monday. You're sitting on the couch, and you might be there again, like I said, physically, but you're not there, right? Yeah. Falling asleep or just not able to kind of pay attention. So there was that aspect, and with my children, then it was my health. I stopped really being able to sleep through the night. I was starting to get up intermittently. And that was impacting my cognitive ability, my quality of sleep, but then my cognitive ability to think and to process. And then, as all that's happening, then I started to lose hope. What is this life? Like, is this really what it's going to be? Until I hit a point in early May of 2017 where I just crashed. And I was basically on a call on a Friday night, and I had to end that call early, and I literally almost had a nervous breakdown, and I had to go down and face my kids and try to figure out how to trick them into thinking everything was okay. But early that Monday morning, I got up, I called my counselor and my doctor, who are fantastic, and they're uncle and nephew to each other, and fortunately they were in tune with what I needed. And I met with them, and they said, listen, you need to take a leave of absence, right? Like, you've got to take a step back, and you need to focus on your health, and you need to focus on your kids. And so I listened. And so, that's what I ended up doing at that time.
So it sounds like you were being brought to your knees. God was trying to tell you something, and you probably weren't listening in the beginning because you were trying to do it all, be it all. I'm sure I can resonate with that.
Yeah, well, I think, we're geared up ever since the beginning, right? You're the provider, right? Yeah. You are out to provide for your kids. They need you in terms of providing for them, the things that they needed. They needed to go to college. They needed clothes. They needed this. So you're wired that way. But I think what God was basically saying was, no, you need to be a provider in a much different way.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be a father and a parent to your kids. And it was only through bringing me to the edge of the abyss that I finally listened. And I am grateful that I did. I'm grateful that he gave me that opportunity. And I'm grateful that I had a support system that was there to catch me.
Yeah. And then this new being forced to take a leave of absence is basically what you decided. So I'm sure there were a ton of emotions wrapped up in that. What did that look like? What did that feel like? How did you navigate that? Like, what were your first steps when you took that leave of absence?
Well, I think, for me, it was, I had to accept it, right? Because even though I physically, mentally, emotionally, I had to, you also still fight it, right? Like, no, I can kind of work through this, but clearly I couldn't. So as my doctor said to me, just be, right?
Yeah.
Don't try to figure out what happened. Don't try to solve the future. Just be present.
Just be
present
still.
with the kids. Be still.
Be still, yeah.
I started in a routine of running, of journaling, of reading scripture and so forth. And that was the one key thing, is that I really doubled down on my faith. While I had never lost my faith through all that, I was definitely distant from it, and I had been disconnected. And I think going deep into my faith and really processing through things and having conversations with God, not just saying prayers, but having open conversations about, Lord, what do you want me to do here? How do I work through this? Really kind of
surrendering,
helped.
basically.
Right.
That's really what I hear. Surrendering. Yeah.
And just help me to figure out what I need to do next. And then as I was going through that summer, I started to gain more clarity. I got my health back. I was able to kind of sleep, and I was able to get my cognitive functioning, my brain processing back again. And then I started to realize I needed to do some pretty significant work. I needed to go heal some things from my past that had kind of always been there, but kind of in the background. And I think Chris had kind of helped me keep at bay and overcome. But now without her presence, they had kind of come back in full force. And I also needed to grieve her. Like, in reality, I never had grieved her loss, and I needed to actually go through that process, the painful process, to do that. But I did, and I was able to, at that point, be able to kind of work through those things and get to a point of clarity, right? And having gone through that painful process.
I think it's so important. It's something that I swear by, you and I both can relate to. And I guess if there's one takeaway or one nugget from today, it's so important that we go through the pain and not around it. And it's actually our pain, our deepest pain in our life, is truly our purpose in life. So we're meant to help others with the pain that we go through. And I think it's changing your mind from, why are you doing this to me, God, to what are you trying to show me so that I can help others, or just changing the way we think of it. And I know myself, not the same story, but when I changed the way I looked at how I've gone through so much and you've gone through yours, that it truly brought me to the other side of wanting to help others through my pain. So that's what you're doing here today.
Yeah.
Today we're telling this story because it's important, and it's horrible and sad, and it's something you live through. But also we want to kind of talk about the importance of really loving everybody in your life for every minute of every day, because you never know what tomorrow could be or bring. Being present, doing the work. So if you do have stuff that needs to be figured out or sorted out, do the work, go through the pain. Don't go around it, because it's going to keep resurfacing just like yours did. It came back, and then helping others with that.
And that's what happened, right? I through that clarity, through doing that work, I came to the decision point, and it was, is my purpose to go back to work? And I don't want to go back to a much different role, but even with that, the one thing I realized is I could not buy time, right? I couldn't buy time with my kids. So was that going to be my purpose, or was it God leading me somewhere different? And, all during that summer, I became very fixated on the concept of joy, right? And joy to me is much different than, say, an emotion like happiness, because they're fleeting, they come and go. But joy to me is a state of being. It's a presence inside of you. It's how you approach everything, so you can be happy and joyful and sad and joyful, right? But so
joy is steady.
It's steady,
I think
right?
It's steady and constant. Yeah.
And so that was the decision. And ultimately, my why changed. What I realized was my why changed. What was important to me for those first 51 years of my life was not what was going to be important for the next, hopefully, 50 years of my life, right? And so I thought about a mission statement. I thought about what are the priorities in my life, and I reprioritized my life around 5 things. And live in communion with God, because that was first and foremost. I had to be, my faith had to be strong on my belief in God, and He had to be with me. Secondly was my health, right? Spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, because if I wasn't healthy, I wasn't going to be there for the kids. The third was stay connected to your children, right? Be there, be the loving presence. We all know in today's world, like if you're not there, there's 1,000 things in the palm of their hands coming through that phone that want to influence them. And you have to be present in their life. You have to stay connected to them. The fourth was I knew I wanted to fall in love again. I wanted to experience love in my life again. And then the fifth one was I truly wanted to give back. I learned so much over the previous years, and I knew that I could help. And I didn't know how I was going to do it yet, but I knew I wanted to get back and kind of live that purpose. So, I oriented my life and made the decision at the time, like, I'm going to walk away from this job. It's a job I loved, the people that I loved, the career that I loved, but I'm going to stay home and raise my kids, because that was what was most important to me.
That's awesome. That's great. I think we should all live like that. So now fast forward, here you are, say 6 years later. How are things? Have you been able to fulfill your missions? And I know the kids. Like, obviously, I can speak on behalf of the kids. They are the most lovely children ever. I'm going to get emotional, so I'm not going to keep going. But you've done a wonderful job, and they're so sweet and spiritual and loving and fun and kind and all of the greatest things. So, but where would you say you are 6 years later?
Well, looking back, like I absolutely would make this decision every day of the week. There were certainly things we gave up. There was certainly we had to change, again, priorities, but also, change how we live, things we could go get or go buy or whatever. But, I would make this decision every day of the week. It has been, in my view, a home run, right? And so I'm living this life of joy 6 years later. My relationship with my kids has never been stronger. I've been there in the morning. I've been there at night. I cook meals. We have dinner on most nights together. I've been actively involved in their life. I went from watching a couple games, every once in a while, to actually coaching them, and just being there for all their key decisions that they had to make in life, and be the shoulder that they could cry on when they were going through something. And it has meant everything to me, and it's meant everything to them. And so that's been, like I said, a home run. And then, finding love again. And so you, my lovely fiance, I was ready at the time that we met 2 years ago. I was living this life of joy, as were you, after coming through something similar. And, I like to describe it as, two joyful people met that day, two hearts of joy, and we were ready. And it's been a whirlwind of romance since, but you have been phenomenal in embracing my kids. It was just as important as how the person was going to embrace me, was how they embraced the kids, and you've been unbelievable with that. So, living this life of joy, finding love, having a relationship with my kids, and then living our purpose. And so this podcast is part of our combined mission to go out and help people get unstuck, find their true purpose, live their life of joy.
Yeah.
And I would say we're doing that, right? And it's been great. It's has its ups and downs for sure, but it's the life I chose. And again, I would never make this decision any differently.
Yeah, I agree. So nicely said. Well, thank you for sharing your story, and we hope that it really inspires and offers hope to you guys, the listeners, and just, focusing on how to navigate through horrible times, overcoming loss. It is possible. Larry's a perfect example of that. It's not easy. You have to go through the pain and do the work, and it's going to take time, but it is possible. So hopefully we've been able to offer a little inspiration to everyone through your story.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for guiding me through this, and I look forward to returning the favor here shortly. So thank you. Thank you for listening in to this episode of the His and Her Life Hacks podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. We look forward to having you join us on future episodes. If there's a topic that you would like Dawne and I to discuss, please feel free to contact us at dawn.jacoby@grit2grace.com or larry.ambrose@grit2grace.com. See you on the next one.